Hi, so I wanted to give you guys some feedback. I finished grading your warm-up protocols, and for the most part, those were really pretty good. So as we move on to planning your initial and your final group, I wanted to just remind you of a few things, and some of this may already have been in the previous videos, but I wanted to remind you because in my conversations with people, there was some people who weren't aware of some of these things, so I wanted to just make sure that you have another way of finding out about some of this. So when you look at your schedule in terms of what group you're doing, pay attention. You've got who's doing the group, you've got what population you specifically will be working with in planning your group, what setting is it, and pay attention to the focus. This is what you're meant to be working on. So if you do something like ADLs and you're meant to do socialization and participation, that would be wrong. So make sure you pay attention to that part. And then of course your frame of reference. That's what you'll use from the Cole textbook and use that as sort of a starting place, okay? So I want to just remind you of that. The next thing I wanted to look at was so the protocol is very similar to the warm-up protocol, but there are a couple of differences. So I wanted to point those out, and I also wanted to make sure people were clear. There was a few things that people didn't quite understand or had a little difficulty on the warm-ups. So the summary, this is just, if somebody wanted to get an idea of what your group going to be out about, it's 1 or 2 sentences explaining that, okay? Not the instructions, not the full description. It's more of this is what your group is about, okay? The purpose, that's where you go into more depth. Why are you picking this group? What does this particular group activity offer that is the reason you're choosing it? So make sure you are clear on that. All right, the next one, this is new, this connection to evidence. You have to be able to find some reference that shows that the group that you're choosing is research-based, okay? So and one article should do it, okay? So you have to go and you have to look at that, and you're gonna cite this resource. So I'm gonna pull up the rubric for these and show you what it's gonna grade you on. Okay, when you find your source, you're going to be graded. There's 3 points on this. So, locates relevant research from reliable source. Okay, so if you do an internet search and you pull something off some website, that's probably not a reliable source. It has to be from a peer-reviewed journal. Okay. The next part, you have to offer the full citation. That means I don't have a preference MLA or APA style. But there are lots of different websites that you put the information in and they'll create the reference for you, okay? Provide summary and level of evidence. So this is where you're actually going to have to look at your evidence-based practice. Remember, we're drawing everything all together. This is end of the year project, so you're meant to be using all that you've learned. And so what level of evidence is your particular research? Some articles will actually say it in there. Some you have to kind of figure out. So make sure you identify that though. And then once you've got your article and you've got it identified correctly, say why it applies to your group. Explain that a little bit. It doesn't have to be long, just a couple of explanations that it's clear why you chose this and why this article shows evidence for your particular choice and group. Okay. So back to this. Goals and outcomes. So some of you were really good at this and some of you struggled more. It's a goal, so make sure that it is structured in the form of group members. It's like client will, only it's group members will. And you have to have it measurable. That's a good goal, okay? So you'll know at the end of the group, did we actually achieve that? And some of you did a really nice job of saying, in order to do this, client will or group members will do this. So that was a really nice way to word it. You wouldn't have to word it that way, but it was very clear when you did. Okay, group membership size. There was some confusion on the warm-up protocols. So this is meant to be in general. So if you led a particular group, let's say the warm-up was mindfulness. Somebody chose mindfulness. My personal favorite, mindfulness, but somebody chose mindfulness. And when you're talking about the group membership size, what about this particular group would limit your number, okay? So not the fact that you have 7 people in your lab and you're a leader, and you know, it's not in this instance, it's what about this mindfulness group would limit your numbers, okay? Maybe there isn't really a limitation other than maybe it's the size of the room, or, you know. So some groups will lend themselves better to certain numbers and others don't really have real specific limitations, but it's meant to be the actual group limiting the size. Okay, populations indicated. This is the populations that you could use this group for, not the population that you've been assigned. It's what could this group be for in terms of a population. So you might have an adolescent group, but that doesn't mean the activity that you're leading would be limited only to adolescents. You would talk about, in populations indicated, you would talk about what the activity would provide for limitations. Member criteria, again, same thing. It's based on the actual activity, not what you've been assigned as part of your group. So make sure you list that based on your activity and figure that out. What might limit that, okay? When you're talking about anticipated limits and potential adaptations, think about if you had someone who had a different ability or had some sort of disability or something like that, how could you adapt this group, or what ways would you maybe have to adapt this group based on who might be in the group, okay? I think that that's, of course, the references, you're going to be listing one of your references up in the connection to evidence, but you'll also have other references. So, for example, if you're going to use the Kolb textbook, you would put that in your reference, okay? So make sure, again, those are APA or MLA, either one. Both are used as part of OT, depending on what your practice setting is. So those are just a few hints that I wanted to give you guys just to kind of keep you going in the right direction. Overall, really good with the warm-up assignments. Keep up the good work, and I'm available if you're not sure about something. Many of you did reach out just to kind of problem solve through some of this. This part of your program is really meant to be very similar to the intervention planning that you've just done. You're kind of using the same clinical reasoning. It's just on a larger scale, and so you're using some of those same skills. And so it is difficult if you're struggling with it because you've not done it before. And that's kind of what we're meant to be doing, is giving you practice doing it. So if you want help, by all means, reach out to me. I'm certainly available to help you with that. All right, good luck with some of this. Keep working on it. First initial group protocol is due this Saturday. All right.